So we are over 14 million a year. Once lockdown disappeared and the doors opened up again, we have definitely seen a massive shift. I had positioning, experience, and I practiced what I preached. You can't complain about the leads you didn't get from the marketing that you didn't do. Pretty much overnight, I was told that I could go blind. When your positioning is strong and when your results are amazing, marketing and sales becomes incredibly easy.
This is the Content Capitalist Podcast. We talk to business owners who've used video to grow their businesses to $1 million a year or more. How they did it, what worked, what didn't. Welcome to the Content Capitalists with your host, Ken Okazaki.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Content Capitalist Podcast, where I have conversations with extraordinary human beings who are doing at least $1 million a year in their business and doing that off the back of creating fantastic content in one way or another. Now, Phil, welcome to the show. And it's so hard for me to give you a worthy introduction. And the reason is that when I first met you, I think we're on Huntington Beach or somewhere around there or Santa Monica or something. And you stopped me on the street. I didn't recognize you. And then I thought you must have the wrong guy. And he said, "You're Ken Okazaki, right?" And I'm just like, holy crap, this is what it feels like when you make some great content and people see it and then your reputation precedes you. So you're one of the, I wouldn't say the first, but one of the very early people who helped me to have that kind of aha moment, like, I get it. But Phil is it ex bodybuilder or bodybuilder? How
No,
would you address that?
it's ex-bodybuilder, retired bodybuilder now.
Retired bodybuilder, but if you Google his name, uh, I'm seriously impressed with how much mass you're able to put on. But he's turned around that passion for bodybuilding and competition into a passion for business and helping other people succeed in theirs. Phil, welcome to the show. Really, really honored to have you as a guest.
Ken, thank you so much. Can't wait to share value, insights, nuggets, lessons, mistakes with all of your guys. So it's going to come thick and fast, everyone. So make sure you get a pen and paper ready. And if you're watching the replay, don't be afraid to pause and stop.
Perfect. And here's the thing, guys. He is one of the most humble people I've ever met. But as I first met him, just his size and me also being Japanese and quite small, I was quite intimidated. But then he has this completely disarming personality, and I think that probably carries through in your business, your ability to relate to people and things like that. Would you mind telling us, Phil, right now, with the many businesses or the many things you've got going on? Roughly, like what's your annual revenue like? Are we in seven figures, multiple seven figures, close to eight figures? Could you give us some hint around that?
I'm going to keep it really simple. So I'm going to communicate in pounds sterling because that is because
Okay.
sometimes when I
That,
get asked one of these things, I'm like in dollars and then Australian dollars, and then I'm into euros and all sorts of stuff. So we are over 14 million a year, GBP, which is pound sterling. So whatever that translates to in your local currency.
okay.
And that's across a main business, a couple of subsidiaries, and then also as well a new business now, which I've set up. I've been taking the funds of current main coaching business and deploying them into property to essentially create assets that give backflow. So we have quite a sizable business. We are most definitely one of the biggest, if not the biggest, mastermind personal development organization in the world for fitness professionals at the moment. And we've got clients from all over the world that have been doing it for the last 5 or so years. And we've had tremendous growth, which is really brought on predominantly by the pandemic. And, we've really maintained that momentum ever since. But I've always been coaching B2B in my career, and I really sort of activated it around about 5 years ago and took it to new levels and scaled it just beyond the one-to-one. So there's a lot of lessons and stuff I'm more than happy to share.
Amazing, and it's really true. Like we met because we're in the same mastermind, and I know for a fact that there were people who weren't set up properly. And when the pandemic hit and they weren't able to anticipate or to pivot quickly, they're out of
Yep.
business. They're looking for a job. And then there's people like you who, I don't know how quickly you pivoted, and we could talk about that, but uh, there are people whose businesses quadrupled in a year because of
Yeah.
the pandemic, because the people who weren't prepared, their customers had to go somewhere. and they went to the people who were, period, right? So
100%.
did you find that happen in your case where you had, you anticipated, you set up a few things in order to pivot quickly?
Yeah, let me explain kind of what happened, and I think this is important for everybody's context for the whole entire kind of coaching industry, and I think it's really important. So, whenever we had the pandemic, long story short, online businesses before were a kind of nice to have, and the supply kind of met the demand. There wasn't a huge supply of online coaching businesses, and a lot of people were a little bit deranged about going online. They felt uncomfortable going online, and then when the pandemic hit and it was illegal to train in gyms and it was illegal to go out of your house, then the whole world was put on pause and everybody was on the internet. And a lot of people that were in careers that they didn't like were forced to reconsider their options and think about the future because they might not have a job. And coaches and mentors and course programs and all that kind of stuff were really just absorbed at a peak time in kind of history because everybody was stuck inside, nothing to do. And they kind of like, once they got over the first couple of weeks or months, they thought, right, I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to have a health kick. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And that time and that kind of exclusion of not being able to go outside and being locked indoors was the perfect environment to grow an online business or to start a course. So what you actually saw was you saw the market grow and then you actually saw individuals businesses grow, right? So I always ask the question, did your market grow or did the business grow? And the actual answer is both. So the big thing to understand here is that, what has happened since is that a lot of people have started a business, gone and done the courses, etc., but the world has returned back to normal. And with the world returning back to normal, the desire and the need and the pain to start an online course or start a business is not as great as what it was. The opportunity isn't there as much as it was. And what you're also finding from a business perspective is that those that experienced a big burst in growth, i.e., a big burst in clients, are now facing the fact that there's more competition, there's a cost of living, there's 101 different reasons why I shouldn't start a business. And you're actually seeing the supply of those coaches, those courses, those business programs through the roof. And the market is significantly more sophisticated because they've been marketed to heavily over the last couple of years from online, marketing tactics now that work really, really well, that are kind of being used by everyone now. So the market has really moved forward. It's a lot more sophisticated. People made a lot of money over lockdown, but quite frankly, once lockdown disappeared and the doors opened up again, we have definitely seen a massive shift. A lot of businesses have stopped. They continue to
Hmm.
operate because they stacked up a big team to handle the fulfillment. The need for that business isn't there anymore. There's more options in the marketplace. So, 2023 is really an opportunity to outmarket, outserve, and outdeliver your competitors. And, it boils down to so many factors, which I'll get into. But, one big question you've got to ask yourself is over the pandemic, did your market grow or did your business grow or did both grow? And it'll be different answers for every single person.
That's really good. That's really good. And I think that that alone, uh, the ability to see things through a framework so that you can quickly make important decisions. And that question you said there, did the market grow? Did the business grow? Did your
Yep.
market grow? Did your business grow? That's a really great way to gauge how you're actually doing. Phil, I'd love for you to take us back to before you even imagined that making $1 million was possible for you. Was there a time like that, or were you born knowing you're going to be a millionaire uh, in your lifetime?
I was brought up in a very middle class family. I wasn't brought up with wealth. I wasn't brought up in poverty. But sometimes when you're middle class, you don't know whether you're coming or you're going, right? So
Hmm.
you don't know. Sometimes you'll hear your parents arguing about money and struggling, and bills are tight, etc. And then other times you'll be pretty flush going on holiday, etc. So I was growing up with beliefs around money that money didn't grow on trees, don't work too hard, setting up a business is risky, all of these beliefs. And long story short, I never really wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a professional, which quite frankly, my parents had, this ideology that that was the perfect life, i.e., go to university, you study, you become a lawyer, become a doctor, and that's it. And quite frankly, I didn't want that. So for me, I really put my foot down and focused on driving my independence. And this was all actually fueled when I was 16 and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So, long story short, this is a very important thread to this podcast, is that when I was 16, I had a lot of health inequalities. I was overweight, I didn't exercise. And long story short, my kind of environment and the way that I was fueling my body and living essentially triggered an autoimmune disease when I was 16. And pretty much overnight, I was told that I could go blind. I could have organ failure. I could die younger, etc. When you're told that at 16, it's quite a big perspective shift. And what you need to realize, in order to disrupt the pattern or disrupt the behavior, there actually needs to be a massive trajectory change. And that was it for me when I was told at 16 that I may have all these health implications. And when I was diagnosed and sitting down in the clinical room with the diabetes specialist and hearing these words like may, could, possibly, might, potentially, I realized that they were speculative words and that there was hope in this kind of conversation. So I zoned in on the areas that I could actually improve: uh, exercise, diet, medication, lifestyle, all of those things. So overnight, I became engrossed in learning how to understand these things, understand the body, so that I could control my own condition. And that turned into a love for going to the gym. That turned into a love for bodybuilding. That turned into a successful bodybuilding career. And as I was studying, I went to university and committed to studying nutrition and human physiology. My dream was to become a dietitian. And as I picked up these skills, and as I began building my body and started to win competitions and all of this kind of stuff, I was defying the odds of what I was told. And I was always entrepreneurial. I was never good at working for other people. um, you know any career that I went into, it was not a value of mine. I knew that I was building somebody else's dream, and I knew that I didn't have control of the most important asset that we all have, which is time. And I realized that I didn't like feeling trapped. I didn't like working in a particular time range. I didn't like having obligation in my calendar. And I decided to take the risk and start my own business. And for anyone listening, I'm not saying that having a career or anything like that is a bad thing. It just wasn't aligned with who I was, and I wasn't wired for it. And I wanted freedom, I wanted flexibility, I wanted autonomy, and a business was a vehicle that gave me that.
Can
So
I pause you there for one
yeah,
second? I kind of want to make sure that I'm on the same timeline here. So at 16, you heard all these things about your health challenges around diabetes challenges, and they started
yeah.
thinking differently. One question came to my mind: why do you think it is that a lot of people will take that information and go into a modality of, oh, I can't do anything because of this? You chose a path of, I need to do all these things because of this condition. I know a lot of people who kind of give up and they're like, well, I can't do all these things. And they see it as a limit instead of as a motivation. Did you ever like vacillate between that? Or was it always just motivating you to do better?
No, I think there's one word that describes my attitude, and it was defiance.
Mm,
I wasn't going to settle for that. And it was in that language that I found hope, right? And with that defiance of not settling for being unhealthy, weak, compromised, I decided to have the courage to go and essentially rewire everything, rebuild everything. And I
mm,
knew that it was going to take time, and I knew that it was going to take commitment with no outcome. But what I did know is that I'm going to give this my best. I'm going to
yeah.
put every ounce of effort into this, because the upside of me learning this versus sitting still is not going to work. So,
Okay.
long story short, I went and studied, and I then ended up selling my first nutrition plans and training plans in the gym.
And how,
And
what's the time gap here? You said at 16 you found this
so
out, you started working,
at
and then
16,
you sold this your nutrition plans. Like
yeah. So
that's when the entrepreneurial spirit kind of started coming
Yeah, I
alive,
mean, I
right?
was always entrepreneurial. I mean, I was always wheeling and dealing in things from
Mm,
16 years of age, even before I was diabetic. But that was just in my blood. And I went to university and picked up the skills and started learning. So I had this credibility and positioning associated with the bodybuilding physique, the knowledge aspect of things. And I began selling my first nutrition plans at like 18, 19, 20. And I realized very quickly that I was able to make more money doing that than going to work for the NHS. And I realized that I could do it of my own accord in my own time. And these things weren't perfect. I mean, they were like on Microsoft Word, they were like 60-page, like Word docs, printed off with a paper clip on them in a brown envelope and given to people. It was just real like newsletter style. And long story short, I began to get results from my clients. The more results that I got from my clients, the more demand that naturally increased for my business. People began to talk, and I became positioned as that's the guy that you need to go to. He's got a nutrition degree, he's got bodybuilding experience. So the lessons there are I had positioning and I had experience and I practiced what I preached. So that's why people were buying into me. And most importantly, I was getting results. Okay. In a
Mhm.
world of coaching now, you know, marketing you can make yourself look like an absolute rock star, but the most important thing is can you back up what you say by one, you've practiced what you've preached, and two, that you actually are getting results and there's an actual bedrock of experience there to actually fall back on. So I began building and scaling that and grew that. And over time, I then switched from the B2C to the B2B because
Mhm.
a lot of trainers noticed my growth. They noticed how I operated, and I built a business that was aspirational. And
And this
alongside
is
going from
around the 18-year-old period, is that right?
no, this is around the probably the 25, 26-year-old
25.
period.
So from 18 to 25, you're building up this business.
Yeah,
Now,
I
within this period, and the reason I'm pausing you here is because some of these details are things that people are going to be genuinely curious about. Uh, I know you said you got the positioning right, and you're doing what you practice, right? I mean, what you
yep,
teach.
yep.
How were you generating leads or interest in what you're doing? Was it 100% organic inbound, or did you have to like put out some flyers or things like that?
Here's the lesson before I go into what I did. When your positioning is strong and when your results are amazing, marketing and sales becomes incredibly easy. Okay. So when positioning isn't there and results aren't there, for example, startup, it's going to be difficult, right? It's going to be hard. So I got leads predominantly for my personal training business through word of mouth. I never advertised. I never went out of my way to outbound people. This was way back when Bebo was a thing, right? This wasn't like it wasn't using Facebook ads or anything like that. I made a point in the gym. I suppose there's lessons to be taken from this. When I was personal training clients in the gym, I was aware that everybody inside the gym was looking at me and watching at how I was behaving. So I was never on my mobile phone. I was always attentive to the client, and I was actually advertising while I was personal training. So in the delivery of my service and how I was actually showing up at the gym, whilst I was serving a client, I was also advertising to everybody around because I wanted to create a standard that one, people knew that I was the best, two, that I was the busiest, and three, that I got the best results for my clients, right? And I wanted to back up that perception by being in a gym surround like I was in the gym every day from 9 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night, and the footfall and the traffic through the gym was the advertisement,
Mm.
right? And then I would always go out of my way to make sure that I was speaking at exhibitions, anywhere that I could get in front of more eyeballs. And I would document and showcase speaking today at, just finished up a conference at. So you had all of these results. You had etiquette in the gym where people were looking at. You had positioning whereby I was speaking in front of audiences and I was documenting that. And I was really creating this perception that this guy is a specialist. This guy is the guy that you go to for this. And that really stood me in good stead. And then when obviously I've transferred into the B2B, my first few years of building that business was all organic. I took the business to over 5 mil organically, not with a single ad. And I believe that's one of the reasons why I've done exceptionally well is positioning and reputation. We're now using ads and we have an outbound sales team and we have all of the fancy parts. But the reason why that is now needed is because we're operating at scale and we've got the machinery, we've got the team, we've got the technology to be able to fulfill at that level and scale. So, you know, in that regard, um, advertising has really changed for me over the course of the years that I've been in business. Um, and side note as well, I also created during that period the world's first online community for type 1 diabetics that were looking to build muscle and get in shape, because the information out there was very vague. So, I wrote the world's best selling muscle building kind of fat loss encyclopedia for type 1 diabetes and created a large community called Diabetic Muscle and Fitness. So, the big overall lesson here, to simplify it, is I turned adversity into meaning and purpose. If I didn't have type 1 diabetes, then I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I wouldn't even know you, right? So, this is a very important thing for business owners, no matter what level that you're at, right? Understand that I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, told that I was going to die, but I did something with that. And what I can just share with all of you guys is, managing your emotions as a founder is incredibly important. And how you manage your emotions is with two things. Number one is realizing that on the other side of the very thing that you're scared about, frustrated about, angry about, is a beautiful outcome, is a beautiful meaning. And you've just got to search and you've got to find it. And that meaning turns into a vision. And when you have that vision allows you to operate from a future self. That vision pulls you forward, and you operate from a vision, not from the circumstances that you find yourself in. So it is very important that you actually sit and take stock of your life right now and actually really reassess, what am I scared about? What am I afraid about? What is frustrating me? What is annoying? And that could be, I'm not generating enough leads. I'm not making enough money. Well, what's that an indicator of? Your messaging is off, your positioning is off, your consistency is off, how you're showing up is off. We all had to start in the same place, right? And if you're looking at somebody else inside your niche or your market that's doing exceptionally well, instead of looking at it, they've got that, I wish I had that, look at what's available to you. All right. Look at what's available to you. And it's all about this reframing of perceptions so that you can get yourself inspired rather than defeated before you begin. All right. Throughout the whole course of your day as an entrepreneur, you're going to have challenges, you're going to have ideas thrown at you that are going to try to defeat you and derail you. But you have to look at what is on the other side. What is the meaning? How is it going to teach me? And you use these frameworks to essentially coach yourself and lift yourself up. And the mind that's focused on the vision, not the current circumstance, is the one that's going to win.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, you did exceptionally well during COVID. In my case, because I wasn't as prepared as you, and I was focused on the circumstances more than the vision. We took actually quite a loss, but in the because we had too much overhead, I had I had my crew of videographers, and we traveled around the world, and we had about, I think, about 10 months of contracts already booked out through 2020 that all got canceled, right? Already paid up, had to refund everybody. It was a fiasco because our model at the time relied so much on on travel, right? But when you said that just now, if you focus on the outcome and not the the current situation, that's when things turned around. I started focusing on, well, the real outcome was for people, for my customers, is they want great video to represent them and build their brands. How else can we do it? And that's when I launched the agency we have now, which is 100% remote, and it's just been going so much better ever since then. And it's a true testament to what you said. The instead of focusing on whatever crap is, there's always going to be crap on your windshield, dead bugs, right?
Yeah.
Focus on the horizon, you'll be doing a lot better than looking at those bugs.
But I
I want to
mean,
ask.
just to add to that,
Yeah.
when the pandemic did hit, of course, I'm a human. There was natural elements of fear and anxiety. You know, I remember I was in the gym and I got a message from one of our client success coaches, and they said, "Hey, everybody in the group's really starting to panic about this COVID thing. Like gyms have been shut down X, Y, and Z." And that's when I knew, all right, their cash flow stopped. How are they going to afford to pay me? But most importantly, how can I keep them in business to keep paying me? And there was an element of exchange there, right? And I think this is very important to get your mindset around. You're not running a charity, you're running a business, and a business requires profit in order to be able to operate, serve, and essentially help the clients and also fulfill your team. So I was faced with this kind of focus of, all right, how can I make more money to be able to sustain us through this rather than shrinking and contracting? And the first thing that I went to was, how can I add more value to these clients in this current circumstance? Okay, what needs to change? What needs to be retweaked? Well, their business has stopped. They're going to need me now more than ever. What am I a specialist at? The online side of things? Okay, so let's teach them how to build an insanely good online coaching program that people can essentially find sanctuary in during this like 2 year period, right? And we saw that our clients grew tremendously during that period because, like I said, people were sitting at home. They wanted to recreate themselves. They got time out from work. The excuse of, I don't have time anymore, was removed. Whereas now that's changed. So um, I do get afraid in business. I do have fear. There are times where it takes me a little bit of time to figure it out. There are times where I'm sitting and I'm going, do I want to do this anymore? Am I sure? And I have to re-coordinate and I have to reevaluate. I said earlier on there, that I was, always had the attitude of go after it, push X, Y, and Z. And that's very true, but I do get scared along the way. I do get, ripples of fear. What if this fails? But again, usually those ripples of fear are indicators that I need to do something with my scenario, right? So it's almost like a feedback mechanism of, if there's anything in my life that's making me feel anxious or triggered or whatever, very quickly I'm onto why. What is the meaning behind this? What meaning have you given it? And I reshape, because your brain is always reforming and reshaping, right? And I want to coordinate that brain into a lens that looks at the world and goes, everything's like, nothing, everything's here to serve you. Everything's here to serve the growth of your soul, the growth of your business, the growth of your life, no matter good, no matter bad. And that's how I kind of want to look at the world.
Amazing. Amazing. And I love how you're focusing so much on, I'd say you lean more toward a philosophical approach to business than tactical.
Very much
And
so.
I
Yeah.
see so many people just talking tactics, tactics, tactics. You're coming in with philosophy, lead by example, serve with excellence, get your positioning correct in your market, uh, practice what you preach. These are all principles. And I think that if more business owners focused on the principles, then the tactics won't matter as much, because tactics expire very quickly, don't they? Like use a group, or do this DM strategy, or run ads that say this particular phrase is going to convert better. It probably will, but if you rely on tactics, you're just going to be surfing one wave after another instead of actually, putting a motor on your boat and going somewhere long term. And that's the philosophy. Thank you
Yep.
so much for sharing that. That's the perspective I'm getting right now. Can we pivot right now into talking about what is currently working for you? And I know that you say what you just said now is you lead by example. You do what you teach, and you're helping fitness coaches around the world to make a lot of money in their businesses. So let's say someone's starting out, and maybe someone watching this right now is like, "Hey, I'm struggling to make $2,000 a month. How can I jump to 10,000? Like, what's the most important thing I need to be doing?"
Yeah, 100%. So if you're struggling to grow your revenue from where you're at right now, you've got to run through a little bit of a filter and a series of questions. Number one, who is my target market? Like, who am I targeting? If the answer is wide and varied, then it's not accurate enough. You need to really narrow down when it comes to a target market to the people that, one, you have got experience of achieving the result that they want to achieve, and you've got to demonstrate three things in your marketing and your message. Number one is, how can I create aspiration for them? I.e., how can they look at me and go, I want that, I want to be that, I want to achieve that? And that comes from being comfortable at humbly bragging, which is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. The one skill that will differentiate you between making it and not making it is confidence. And confidence comes from actually doing things. A lot of people want to have confidence before they do things. It comes after you do things. And if you are starting a business, you are technically selling some form of previous experience and action that you have implemented to achieve a result. And you are re-coordinating, reformulating, packaging that up as a solution to somebody else's problem. And the ability to demonstrate why people should listen to you is critical in getting attention, maintaining attention, and most importantly, getting people to trust and part way with cash. Number two, how can you de-risk people? So when you look at your service, how are you communicating that it's de-risking people? So for example, if I go and hire you, Ken, for content, how am I de-risking myself? Well, I'm not having to set up my own camera, potentially shoot it with a wrong angle, upload it and edit it, and waste hours of precious time that are going to pull me away from looking at the operations of my business, making sales, or formulating the marketing plan to get more clients. So you're de-risking me in terms of giving me my time back to be able to allocate into more important actions and activities and projects in the business that will move the needle. And three, how can you demonstrate transformative value? So run through that filter. One, are you letting the market know what they really need to know about you? Number two, are you showcasing to the market that you can de-risk them? And number three, are you showcasing to the market that there actually is a transformative process, a transformative element to your service, i.e., life before, life after? Right? So if you can make sure that you're blending all three of those things together and you're making sure that they're being seen by the right people and you're actually being confident in tying in a clear call to action with all of those things, then you can rest assured from an organic base point that you've got your stuff covered. And I'm a big believer in making sure that your organic material is sound before you move to paid. The reason why is because one, it's free. Two, you're creating natural, real demand for your business versus when you go to paid, you're taking something and creating an artificial demand. And in my opinion, it is best to have a solid, strong, real, true organic base, then take paid to complement the organic. Paid is
100%.
amazing, but it's going to be way more expensive and way more ineffective if that messaging, trust, positioning hasn't been validated in the organic world first. And don't get me wrong, you could most certainly blend together authoritative figures and put them on paid straight away for a new business or a new project. But the reality is they've already stood the test of time organically before they've gone and done that. So one is the messaging, making sure that that is covering all of those bases. Two is actually, your offer, right? Is it converting? So if you look at the last 10 people that came on the call with you, how many of them did you convert? How many of them did you convert? And, generally speaking, a good 50% is a great kind of target. You are going to get people that will not work with you, that are wrong fits, that cannot afford the services. And essentially you've got to be content with the fact that you can't help everyone, right? And you've got to reset that expectation in your mind, because the immature mind or the immature entrepreneur will expect everyone to be able to say yes, and they will take it as a personal objection when somebody says no. And the challenge with that is that when they start letting that get into their head, people are saying no, and they don't have the skills or they don't have the inputs around them to be able to re-coordinate the offer, re-coordinate the messaging, and test different things. They then think everything's a personal problem,
Yeah.
when the reality is they just don't have the skills. So understand that when you start, that there is a skill gap, that there is a planning gap, that there are plenty of blind spots that will hold you back from the truth, right? And you need to be able to test the market and get feedback as to, did that work, did that not work, what can I change, what can I pivot? You've got to be good at that, because the market's a noisy place. It's very noisy. It's hard
Yeah.
to captivate attention. Everybody's kind of selling the same thing in a roundabout way. So
Mhm.
how can you break that attention mold? How can you infiltrate and essentially drive trust ASAP? That is critical.
Can I ask you a
So
clarifying question just earlier on? Because what you said about being a couple things. Get super clear on who you're selling to. If it's if too broad, then you got to narrow that down. And you also talked about de-risking. Could you give a real life example of how specific are you when it comes to knowing, like narrowing down who you're selling to?
yeah. So for example, when it comes to working with clients, we've got an ideal uh, client avatar called Dave. All right. So Dave is uh, a guy at 26 years of age. He's from Ireland, and he used to be very overweight. And he's had a radical transformation with fitness and nutrition and being able to recreate his body. So he knows in his heart what exercise and training and nutrition can do for people, particularly himself. And a lot of people have observed his fat loss transformation and they want help. Dave's in a career that he doesn't like and starts to give out a little bit of tips and realizes that people want him to train him, or people want him to train them. Then he begins to build a business, gets a few clients, has no problem getting clients because he's already done the very thing that they all want to do, loves it, gets entertained with it, does it for a while, and then realizes, flip, I'm making good money at this. I'm going to quit my job. Then realizes that he's only got so much time in the day. He doesn't know how to charge properly. And as a result of that, he's got all this skill and talent that's untapped and unlocked because he doesn't have the right systems, he doesn't have the right education, he doesn't have the right skills. And as a result of that, he's sitting on top of an asset himself that isn't being deployed to its full potential. So that's whenever he's in enough pain to go, I can make more, I can help more, and I can create a life of freedom for myself and quit the job. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and learn from somebody that's done it. So what have we got there? We've got somebody that's practiced what they preached. We've got somebody that is already decent at generating market trust because they've done what they said they're going to do. And three, they want to know the fundamentals of how to unlock more time, how to unlock more sales, and most importantly, how to unlock the challenges and mindset issues of running a business. So that is a
Perfect.
beautiful client for us, right? Because they come pre-built with conviction, they come pre-built with a degree of market trust that we just need to amplify and put a magnet on. The worst kind of client for us is somebody that is fed up with their job and has just gone into fitness because they like lifting weights and they want to make money quick. And the reality is, it's a very transactional focused kind of career path whereby they're not inspired enough to be able to cope with the challenges, the down slumps, and their only focus is just money. Whereas if you look at the first person that I shared, they're actually selling a life. They're actually selling a future, higher quality, better life that they have lived through themselves. So,
Makes so much
you know,
sense.
that there's a lot of underlying like depth to that versus the I just don't want to go broke and I want to hit a 10K month.
Yeah.
And the problem is that there's a lot of people that want the 10K month, but don't have the prerequisites of actually practicing what they preach. I mean, there's a lot of personal trainers out there that, I mean, they shouldn't be personal trainers because they're not walking, talking business cards. They don't reflect the standards of what they're actually coaching, right?
Yeah,
You
I get
know,
what you're saying.
you're not going to learn how to grow a business from somebody who's never grown a business before, you know?
I
So,
think there's a lot of fake coaches out there. And I say that with some with a bit of affection because I think a lot of people take too literally the term "fake it till you make it." And I think you can fake
right.
confidence until you feel confident, but you can't fake business results and then
Yeah.
get people to pay you for it. Uh, and
Let me
that's
let me
just
tell you
plain
let me tell
unethical.
you the truth, Ken, right? Let me tell you the truth is that in this world, coaching is one of the most profitable and lucrative forms of business that you can create. It's fast, instant cash. It's also associated with status and power. If I'm coming to learn from you that, you know, you can get really a lot of validation by working with a lot of people and having events and all that kind of jazz. And the challenge is that a lot of people only see upside. They only see, oh, selling high ticket, lean margins. I can start with a small team, etc. But what they don't see is that sales doesn't go linearly. What they don't see is the fact that if your margins are ultra high, that it's pretty much reliant upon you. Then what they don't see is the hiring and the management of people and relationships. What they don't see is the day-to-day challenges of tax, um, clients that aren't implementing, changes in market. There's so many variables and hats to be worn when it comes to running a business.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, those individuals just focus on upside. And when you just focus on upside, you are oblivious to the downside. And then when you get hit with the downside, then you quit.
Yeah. It's true. It's 100%
So,
true.
yeah.
Could you talk to me a bit about, and after this section, we're going to go in and see if there's any questions that we could address from the viewers. Could you
Yep.
talk to me a bit about how you're integrating any type of content, whether it's paid media, organic media, written, video, graphics? How are you leveraging content in your strategies?
So, long story short, if I'll run through every channel that we use, and I'll
Okay.
run through channels that we are going into. So, from an actual overall stats perspective, around 25% of our leads are inbound at the moment. 75% are outbound focused. All right. So that just gives you a proportion as to what level of revenue is responsible from outbound. Okay.
Okay.
Outbound is a incredibly powerful strategy when it's utilized and done correctly. So if we look at baseline material, we've got, uh, email list, nurturing the email list. The email list should essentially be pretty much like the oil in your house. It should be on all the time. You should be nurturing that list. We then have our main platform, which is Instagram. A lot of personal trainers are on Instagram. It's a highly visual platform. So all the organic stuff is there. Inside stories, we do things like two steps, polls, all of those things to generate as much conversations with the market as possible, to open as many loops with the market as possible, and actually then insert the question: what are your goals? Do you need help with anything? Tell us a little bit more about your plans to grow in 2023. What's holding you back from getting there quicker, etc. So we're always looking to open up loops through those mechanisms. We then are we've utilized things like products before. I created the world's first productivity journal for fitness professionals. We sold that as a way of getting addresses, emails, mobile phone numbers, and then we'll use things like snail mail to contact them. We also have on all our lead magnets, we use Facebook ads a lot to advertise. We'll collect mobile number, email. We call the mobile number and offer them help, which is an incredible strategy, which books us and keeps our sales calendar filled. We make sure that we interact with every new follower, every new engager. We then are always speaking at any events that we have. We have strong JV partners that are credible experts in the industry, that are clients of mine, that give us relative shout outs and distribution. That's one of the most important words you got to get focused on when it comes to content is distribution. You can produce the best reel ever, but if nobody's seeing it, then it's problematic. So you want to be getting people saving, resharing, shouting out, agreeing with you, and you can use a multitude of different tactics to do that. You can inject humor, you can inject value, you can inject a rant. You want to align your stuff with what people essentially want to back up and say, hey, this guy supports me in saying this, and I think this is true. And there's strategies for content, brand awareness. Do you want to get more eyeballs on, or conversion? And you've got to know your metric when it comes to measuring the outcome of the content. So if you're producing conversion content like a testimonial or a social proof thing, the main metric isn't the likes and the followers of it. The main metric is it actually converting and leading to calls that close? If it's a brand awareness piece or something that you want to showcase and share, then likes and followers and reach and all that kind of stuff are important. But we use, a combination of, if you want to go narrow into Instagram, we will do one content day a month or two content days a month, and we will shoot up a bunch of reels based off topics and concerns that our clients have. We're also about to enter the YouTube space. I've seen that you've had Tom on, and we've been creating and crafting content around kind of best performing titles, and then we repurpose and we resnip and we stretch content into podcasts, reels. Now that GPT is out, we can now create captions and little articles and other bits and pieces. It's still got a little bit of way to go because sometimes when you do it, the wording
Yeah.
isn't like amazing. It's not like something you would represent yourself. I think a lot of people are jumping at this whole chat GPT thing when it's not perfect yet. It will get better for sure. So we always make sure that the principle is we always make sure that there's a steady stream of content that is being showcased on our main channels that essentially influences people what to think, what to do, and essentially create the excitement about working with us. I
Amazing.
want to create the perception I will work with him one day, or that's the place that I need to be. I always want to be above the level of comprehension for every other one of my competitors. So I like creating that level of if you really want to go to build a business to like extraordinary levels, go here. And that's again associated with the clients that we have
Yeah.
versus the, just breaking
Yeah.
in everybody else, highly crowded competitive market. I want to be above the comprehension of that.
Let me ask you real quick, to do all that, because you're talking about, and I lost count. There was about, I think, 14 different channels of ways to create more engagement or interest or leads, right?
Yep.
How many people do you have working on this? And the reason I'm asking this is for some viewers, they might hear all this and say, "Well, crap, I can't do that." I want people to understand that it took a journey, and there's a lot of things you did to put things in place. But tell me the size of your team that's responsible for executing on all these things you just
We,
walked us through.
yeah, we have 5 people that are essentially responsible for snipping, editing, coordinating, all that kind of jazz. I started with a videographer who came to me, shot set days in a month, repurposed and rescheduled. But when you start stretching things to YouTube and you start stretching things to articles and whatever, you need to bring in copywriter, you need to bring in graphic designer, you need to bring in 2 editors, you need to bring in one manager to coordinate the assets and create the pipeline. Um, I started with one videographer,
Hmm.
and grew from there. And again, look at what's available to you. Look at what you'll grow into. My business is now at a size where I can justify the expense in that.
Yeah.
Whereas when I first started, that would have been very intimidating and would have sank my business. So one of the big misbeliefs that a lot of you will have is thinking that you need that now. No, you don't. Your main focus right now, if you are just starting, is to get 2 to 3 clients this week. All right. 2 to 3 clients this week. Try to get 2 to 3 clients every single week. It's not over ambitious. It's not essentially a low goal. It's a realistic goal. And the problem that I've had with a lot of coaches is that they want to be hitting 10 a week, 10 a week. And then one week they get 2 because, you know, they're busy or something's got in the way. And then they have this whole self defeated kind of attitude towards life. So, when you go to set targets, set something that stretches you just slightly, but it's not too easy, but it's not too hard. It's called eustress. That is the key to growing a business is eustress, right? You don't want stress. You don't want complacency. You want eustress. So eustress you can handle, not too challenging, not too easy, bang in the
Yeah.
middle.
I love that term, eustress. Tim Ferriss first introduced that to me.
Yeah.
Amazing way to look at everything.
That's how I
Um,
look at everything in the business, Ken. If it's too
Absolutely.
stressful, we've overcooked something. If it's underwhelming and not stimulating enough, we're not setting big enough goals.
Amazing. And you've obviously seen this in the actual, like, metaphysical realm when you're bodybuilding.
Physiology of the
You got to
body,
stress
right?
stress your muscles, otherwise they don't grow.
They
You
don't
got to
grow.
and it is about stress every single time.
Well,
Uh
what actually happens is they get injured.
exactly. And they get repaired in a slightly bigger state, and
Correct.
that's the key behind this. So I got a question here from the audience, and I think this is recording just fine. So number one, from Jeremy F to Cody. Jeremy, thanks so much for asking. He says he loves your work. Could you tell us a little bit more about your decision to build an event location at your home? What's the thinking behind running events in such a private setting? And how do you cook the best steak? Now, Phil, I want to respect your time. Do you have time to go just a little bit longer to answer these questions?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Okay, so this is from Jeremy. Did you catch that question?
I got it. So number one, the event space for me, I first of all I built it not for business. I built it primarily for an outlet for me to cook and barbecue, which is a huge passion of mine, and host, and most importantly, bring people together. I wanted to create my own room. I just turned 35, so for running a business my size, there's not many people in my country, which is Northern Ireland, that I can relate to. So a lot of my friends and peers are a lot older than me. And one thing that I've done very well in my life has been able to bring others together, invite them, and I created a space to basically create a room of really smart people that I could hang around with, because I was fed up of having to go to the States and having to go all over the world to find great people. So one, I created it as a networking place for myself. Two, I created it for cooking. Third, I ran my high level kind of one to one mentoring slash like really high level clients there. And, tomorrow I'm doing a mentoring day for, two coaches that are two business partners that are coming out, flying out to the day, and it's an intensive. And I do a lot of like one-on-one mentoring in like bursts. So I do like a power day where it's literally like from 9 to 6, and I try to do like 3 of those a month. And every finder coming out to me is over a couple of mil. They're very intensive. They're not like the prolonged one-to-one mentoring. They're just
Mhm.
intensives. And tomorrow the goal and the focus is to add 1 million to their bottom line. So I can really charge a beautiful premium for that, for my time to get access to it. And yeah, long story short, I use it for that. Best steak is picanha. That's one of my favorite cuts. I like it medium rare. And yeah, rosemary, garlic, salt, pepper. Can't beat that.
Awesome. One more question from him. What are your thoughts on positioning, and how do you balance done for you and done with you as far
Okay.
as the way you work in your business?
So positioning is critical. It's one of those areas that you're either comfortable with or you're not. And if you're not comfortable with it, you need to get comfortable with it, because you can tell yourself 101 stories in your mind as to why you're better than everybody else. But if the market don't know, then you're the best kept secret. And you can't complain about the work that you didn't do to market your business. You can't complain about the leads you didn't get from the marketing that you didn't do. So every, like, for me, 2 to 3 times a week, I want to be doing, in my mind, 2 to 3 times a week, positioning, showcase it on stories, right? So, for example, I'm now speaking with you, Ken. I can go sharing secrets to our business success with Ken Awazaki. Love being interviewed about the growth of our business over X, Y, and Z. That's a very small but subtle insight to, well, why is Phil being interviewed about his business growth with this Ken guy? Well, because he's obviously got value to share. So it's a subtle thing. The next thing could be, tomorrow I'm working with these amazing clients that are really well positioned. Well, if they're going to Phil, like, that's where all the people. So look at throughout my week, how can I demonstrate 3 pieces of positioning, right? And I like to work with figures in my head. Sometimes it's good to go intuitively, but sometimes intuition can kind of like, it's more systematized. And I know
Hmm.
that over time, if I process it, that at the end of the year, if I've done 3 a week, 3 positioning plays, that's really going to put me in a good stead versus the intuition of whenever I feel like it, because sometimes we just don't.
Yeah.
So, and two, the question about done for you, done with you. I mean, look, everything that we do is now a combination of done in house, or we outsource stuff that we, well, one, don't have the talent for, or two, that is maybe a separate project that needs catered for. So
Yeah.
um, that's outside our realm, or we don't have the bandwidth to do it. So, I mean, you got to blend both.
Okay. That makes sense. I think, and I would add to that what Jeremy's asking here is, what do you actually enjoy doing more of? Some people enjoy actually implementing for people because then they could see the satisfaction of getting to the end. And those are more the control freak kind of people. And then some people just want to talk about it and teach, and they don't want to touch the implementation at all. So I think it's got to do with your personality a lot. I
Yep.
got one question here from someone named She Raz. They say, I'm a professional guest blogger and content marketer. How can I reach more potential clients? I know that's do you feel like you could give them a negative advice there, or is
Yeah, here's exactly what I would do. I would write a list of 10 people down that are easy for you to get in touch with, or how to get in touch with them, that have got access to the audience, that have the pain point that you solve. And I would look at writing them something in advance, giving it to them, or asking them, saying, hey, look, listen, I can add a lot of value to the people that follow you. Um, can I pay you to get access to them? Or looking at doing something, think, just call it an altruistic ask, right? Where you simply just say to people, hey, listen, I've been following you for a while. I know your audience. I know their pain points. I believe I can add something to them that is going to be really useful. And two, I'm happy to back up your message inside this, but this is also going to save you work. Would you let me do it? Right. So it's you want to get in front of people. The reason why you're
Mhm.
struggling to get leads is because very few people know you, and very few people know you because you're not getting in front of the right people. And in order to
Chicken and
catalyze
the
that,
egg? It's the it's the,
yeah,
you need both. Love it. Thank you. Now this is the very last one. I'm gonna let you go. From Alex Dragon Cullen. He's asking, why do you think that there's very few online PT businesses that are doing 50 to 100 million dollars, considering how many people need to lose weight? Do you think there's like a glass barrier?
Well, when it comes to an online coaching business, there is only a certain limit that generally those businesses can go to. And I mean, we have, there's a service based business, you've got a product based business, you've then got technology based businesses. So obviously, the biggest business is going to be a blend of all that. But when you go purely coaching, I mean, there is only a certain size that it can grow before you start overcooking it. And then you need more coaches, you need more events, more complexity, and then people kind of feel part of a Weight Watchers kind of group. Or I don't know if you guys have it in the states, but it's kind of like a the Biggest Loser kind of approach.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I mean, there is a threshold for these businesses in terms of size before you get diminishing returns, high levels of churn. Um, you know, the most valuable ones are obviously going to be some product based, technology based ones. I mean, yes, you could argue supplements, but the margins in those are incredibly small. But usually it's somebody that's got a deep catalog of products:
Hmm.
coaching, technology, products, education, courses, tech.
Basically, you just got to hedge your customer around with everything to do with fitness. And
Correct.
got it. All right. Look, I want to wrap this up, but and thank you so much for answering these questions from the audience. I think that I just want to. Oh, Tom Breeze, he just said, "I love me some Phil." You mentioned him earlier, and
Tom, I mentioned you
Martin
earlier, bro.
Moreno commented that he's a huge fan of yours. Uh,
Oh,
and so you got fans in the audience. That's awesome. If
cool.
somebody were to want to get into your world, listen to your podcast, consume your content, or maybe straight up pay you to coach them, what's the best way for them to find you?
Just really simple. Go and find me on Instagram, drop me a message. Simple as that.
That's right. That's Phil
Let's keep it
Graham.
simple.
Down below, we'll put the links to all his socials. And I guess if you're watching this live on Facebook, look at the description on this post. Make sure that if you enjoyed this, and just by virtue of the fact that you listened all the way to the end, I'm going to guess you did enjoy it. You got tons of value from Phil. Please do give it a star rating, whatever you think is great, which was, of course, going to be 5. And don't forget to share this with anybody else who you think, like, if you got some value out of this, which Phil, he gave so much value. Like, it's ridiculous how much people pay him for this, and he's giving this for free. And this is my sneaky way of getting a bunch of free consulting. But aside from that, guys, this is extremely valuable. This is somebody who's boots on the ground, actually done this, built up a multi-million dollar or million pound business. And everything he said, I believe it's 100% true. You're going to want to listen to him. Share this with somebody else who would appreciate it. Other than that, Phil, any last words?
Guys, the biggest word that could leave you with is just having courage. Courage to step into the unknown, do whatever it is, hire the person, put the marketing out, put the prices up, reevaluate things, pivot, leave the career that you don't like, leave the business that you're in that you don't like. Courage is the very thing that's going to drive you forward. And, at the end of the day, all the stuff at life that you're worried about, all the chaos, all the disorder, if you like, if you can find the meaning in it, you move forward. If you dwell on the consequences and the circumstance, you're never going to go forward. So pinpoint what your future self is going to look like, talk like, feel like, do, and let that pull you forward. And you need courage to do that. So lots of love. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Phil. And guys, I will see you in the next episode. And for those of you watching live on Facebook, this is the first time we're doing this. Make sure you go to contentcapitalist.com to subscribe, and you can listen to this on Apple Podcast or Spotify, whatever your favorite platform is. There's a ton more like this. Get subscribed, and I will see you again soon. Thank you, Tom. I mean, not Tom, Phil. Thank you, Phil. Uh, awesome.